Your lotus feet are the true vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane measure. Only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluding image who worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the sense, which even persons rotting in hell can. However, so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them meaning people in hell. Mercy. As opposed to the Christians, said before, they believe once you go to hell, there's no salvation. But here we see, oh my Lord, you're so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them, and those who are in hell. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, there are two kinds of devotees. One who desire material pleasures, and those who desire nothing but service to the Lord. Material pleasures can be attained even by hogs and dogs, whose condition of life is health. The dog eats, sleeps, and enjoys sex life to the full extent. And it is also very satisfied with such hellish enjoyment of material existence. Modern yogis advise that because one has senses, one must enjoy to the fullest extent, like cats and dogs. Yet, one can go on and practice yoga. Is it on?
It is on, but the volume is right.
Modern yogis that because one has senses, one must enjoy to the fullest extent, like cats and dogs. Yet, one can go on and practice yoga. This is condemned here by Kardama Muni. He says that such material pleasures are available for cats and dogs in a hellish condition. The Lord is so kind that if so-called yogis are satisfied by hellish pleasures, He can give them facilities to attain all the material pleasures they desire, but they cannot attain the perfectional stage attained by Kardama. Hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection, and therefore they think that sense gratification is the highest goal. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time by reciting some mantra and by some practice can cheaply aspire for perfection. Such persons are described here as Hatha Medashaha, which means those whose brains are spoiled. They aspire for material enjoyment by perfection of yoga or meditation. In Bhagavad Gita is stated by the Lord that the intelligence of those who worship the demigods has been spoiled. Similarly, here too, it is stated by Kardama Muni that one who aspires after material enjoyment by practice of yoga has spoiled his brain substance and is fool number one. Actually, the intelligent practitioner of yogas should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of nescience by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. The Lord confirmed this benediction in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Well, that's some dangerous information. Everything's going to depend on what people desire. And if we have a spoiled brain that's only desiring sense gratification, then Krishna will just give us that. And that's like a ticket to hellish planets. So, why use up all our energy and intelligence for living like a dog or a cat? Doesn't make sense. And here he says, hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection. And therefore, they think that sense gratification is the highest goal. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time, by reciting some mantra and by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. Such persons are described here as Hada Meta Saha, which means those whose brains are spoiled. They aspire for material enjoyment by perfection of yoga or meditation. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated by the Lord that the intelligence of those who worship the demigods has been spoiled. Here too, and similarly here too, it is stated by Kardama Muni that one who aspires after material enjoyment by practice of yoga has spoiled his brain substance and is fool number one. Well, let's think about this a minute here. This is very interesting because we have so many yoga schools in the United States now, where people go and they get trained in doing yoga. But the question is it real yoga or is it something else? So, uh, just like, devotees are yogis also. They engage in devotional service. And they say that yoga is when you engage in service of Lord, where you don't ask for anything personally. You simply serve whoever is there. I mean, it could be someone else, just not a family member. However, here, Prabhupada writes, hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection. And therefore, they think that sense gratification is the highest goal of life. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time, by reciting some mantra and by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. So, long time ago, I was living with a priest, an Armenian priest. He was a high priest. He was more than a priest. He was, and let's see, you have a priest, and you have what do you call this? Well, there's different levels. He was on a higher level. He was more than a priest. He was an archbishop. There you go. So, and then after archbishop, you become even higher. But he was, on his way to go even higher. So I was living with him. He was teaching me the Bible, and we talk about it. And then one day he said, look, if you don't enjoy life in the material world, you won't know how to enjoy life in the spiritual. That was his philosophy. So, what happened to him? Well, as time went by, he gave up being a priest, became a businessman, and got married. Now, I'm not going to criticize him because in his mentality, he did the right thing. It'd be a worse thing to continue being a priest and engaging in illicit sex. This way, he gave up being a high priest. He was not just a priest, he was an archbishop, which means right next to being uh, the highest position. And he got married and he stopped being a priest. But at least he was being honest. And he, well, anyway, he disappeared, let's put it like that. But he had, a wife and children and so forth, and he worked. Okay, so uh, Prabhupada says the Lord is so kind that if so-called yogis are satisfied by hellish pleasures, he can give them facilities to attain all the material pleasures they desire, but they cannot attain the perfectional stage attained by cardamom. Well, that makes sense. That's perfect reasoning. Okay, you want to have temporary, mundane sense gratification. Okay, you can have it, but you're not going to attain the higher stages of Krishna consciousness. And same thing in the Catholic Church. Actually, in the Catholic Church, in the Armenian Church, they permit priests to get married. In the Catholic Church, they don't permit priests to get married. And there are a lot of problems. Priests become sometimes homosexuals, or sometimes they become, uh, you know, uh, have sex with nuns. It's unbelievable, but they actually have sex with nuns and sex with women. So, not all priests, of course. Then there are priests who become homosexuals, but not all of them, of course. But there are more than you would think. Then you have priests that become drunkards. There's a whole number of priests who are drunkards. So when they develop that bad habit, they can no longer officiate as a priest, but there's a special place where the Catholics put them where they can try and stop their bad, addiction. So, yeah, it's not easy for young men to remain a priest their whole life. And that means you have to be chaste your whole life. So it's difficult for them sometimes. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's not impossible. It is very possible. But it's difficult for them sometimes. And there's a lot of fall downs in the Catholic Church. And even amongst the nuns, there are fall downs amongst the nuns also. But you have to you have to respect the Catholic Church. It's trying to maintain the principle of chastity amongst the nuns and the priests. And not everybody is a failure in the Catholic Church. And the idea is good. Just like in Krishna consciousness, we have sannyasis. They completely give up illicit sex. But sometimes there are fall downs amongst the sannyasis also. And the brahmacharis, they also are chaste, but sometimes there's fall downs amongst the brahmacharis. Of course, they can get married and become grihastas. So this whole point about sex is troublesome because if a person can give up sex, they are, I think, what did Prabhupada say? I think he said that 75%, ready to look this up, they're 75% or higher on their way back to Godhead. See if you can find what he actually said.
What can
Say that Prabhupada said that when a person gives up illicit sex, they are, what is it, 75% or 95% uh, eligible to go back to Godhead. I forget what percentage. It was a very high percentage. So they have celibacy in the Catholic Church, there's celibacy in Krishna consciousness. Uh, but of course, in Krishna consciousness, you can also be married and also officiate like a priest. Uh, what should say?
I read something. If you stay brahmachari, then you have a 75% chance of going back to Godhead.
Yeah, see, 75%. Yeah. Well, that's a pretty high percentage. It's over 50. Okay. Uh, Finally, Prabhupada says in his purport, actually, the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of nescience, meaning the ocean of ignorance, by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction to become cats and dogs or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. The Lord confirms this benediction in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires. Now, that is a very, let's say, dangerous promise, because if somebody, wants to have sex like a dog or a cat, that means that Krishna will help them to attain that. Let me read that again. I want to make sure I didn't make a mistake. Actually, the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of nescience, meaning ignorance, by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. Okay, that very clear. Next, the Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. Excuse me. The Lord confirms this benediction in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires. Oh, can you look up where that statement is made in the Bhagavad Gita? Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires. Now, see, yeah,
This is the 5:15 man proposes, God disposes.
maybe.
I know that that's in the 5th chapter, 15.
Now, that means that everything depends on what the jiva or the living entity desires. So, Krishna does not interfere with the with limited limited, um, what do you call it? Limited independence of the living entity. If the living entity is hell bent on getting sense gratification, Krishna will help him or her get the sense gratification. Now, someone might say, well, why does he do that? Why didn't God just make everybody, a lover of God? Well, then everyone would be like a robot. There wouldn't really be love. Love has to be something you choose to do. If you're forced to do it like a robot, then it's not love anymore. I heard people say, well, it's God's fault. They should have just made us all pure devotees. No, it's not like that. That wouldn't be love. That would be robot culture. And Krishna doesn't want robots. He wants genuine people to love him, and he'll reciprocate that love. But there's no such thing as a robot that falls in love. I'm sure they're trying to make that, they'll condition a robot to be able to say, I love you. But that doesn't mean there's real love. You know? Real love means it's going to be sacrificed. So how can a robot sacrifice? I don't think it's possible for the robot to sacrifice. Yeah. So we see that hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment and perfection. And therefore, they think that sense gratification is the highest goal of life. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time, by reciting some mantra and by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. Well, that was like the priest I was with. He told me, listen, he said, if you can't enjoy life in this world, how are you going to enjoy life in the spiritual world? So, using his philosophy, he fell down from the priesthood. He was the high priest. He was not just a priest, he was an archbishop. He fell down from being an archbishop and then he got married and started a business, gave up all his priesthood. Of course, if your philosophy is, well, you can't enjoy in the spiritual world unless you enjoy in this world. You know. So that doesn't mean we should suffer in this world, but it means that we should follow the rules and regulation of spiritual life. Now, he chose to be a priest. No one forced him to be a priest. He chose to be a priest. And he chose to take the vow of celibacy. And now he's violating it. So, that's a sinful thing. So he got married and started a business, you know.
So
And
this could also be ye yatamam prapadyante. Not exactly that, but because Krishna says that as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly.
yeah, it's about that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I reward them accordingly. Mm. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated by the Lord that the intelligence of those who worship the demigods has been spoiled. Similarly, here too, it is stated by Kardama Muni that one who aspires after material enjoyment by practice of yoga has spoiled his brain substance and is fool number one. There is, by the way, there are yoga schools that include sex as part of their yoga practice. Look that up. There's one lady in New York who does that I've read about that. Yoga schools that include sex as part of yoga. Of course, it's not really true. The whole idea of yoga is to give up sex. See anything?
Mm, I'm not finding. You find it?
You find anything? Yoga teacher in New York includes sex as part of yoga practice. Is there anything?
So, tantra.
Yeah, there you go. Tantra. they use they misuse the Vedic concept. Go ahead.
Um,
Tantra is a yoga practice where actually, it's about controlling sex, but to prove it, you become naked and you see naked women also, and you don't have sex. Now, I might be wrong, but that is my understanding of this Tantra practice. But of course, when you do something like that, uh, the whole thing will degenerate into just having sex. Because the tantric yogi, he'll be naked, and there should be some woman there naked, and he won't. He's not supposed to, even touch her. Now, I might be wrong, but let's see what it says.
Modern tantric sex is a combination of ancient philosophy
And modern speculation.
sacred sexuality.
Let's say that again.
Modern tantric sex is a combination of ancient philosophy, traditional practices, together with a sacred sexuality,
Together with what?
Sacred.
sacred
Sacred sexuality. Whoa.
and modern science and sexuality.
Science.
Mm.
Oh, they threw the science in there too. Okay. What else does it say?
Often with a heavy dose of new age philosophy and ideas around energy and chakras.
Ideas about energy and chakras. Okay. Well, obviously, when you, yeah, this is Kali Yuga, see. So when you start talking like that, it means they're going to end up having a lot of sex in their yoga practice. Does it say anything else?
Yeah, a more accurate term for this work is sacred sexuality or spiritual sexuality.
Yeah, you see, there you go. Sacred sexuality or spiritual sexuality. What do they mean by that? Do they explain what they mean by that?
And it says it focuses on cultivating Shakti and creating freedom, connection, embodiment, and erotic energy.
Oh, erotic energy. There you go.
It's life changing.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, so this erotic energy. So they try and, uh, hold back their not hold back their sexual inclination, but hold back their uh, having what do you call that? Oh, jeez, I forget. I always forget bad things. Forget what is it called? Um, a man will stay naked, and a woman will be naked, and he'll try and hold back his, uh, let's say, desire for having sex, something like that. They have these seances where they do that. See if that's right. That's the tantric. Okay, the tantric practice of sexuality. Look that up. Tantric practice of sexuality. The whole thing is bogus, but anyway, it's happening though in the United States and other places. The tantric practice of sexuality.
AI content. Tantric sex, also known as sexual yoga, is a slow,
Sexual yoga, got it? Whoa. They say it clearly there. Yeah.
meditative practice that uses sexuality in a ritualistic or yogic context. The goal is to achieve an intense, enlightened connection with your partner or yourself through a sensual experience.
Wait, what? Sensual experience. There it is. That means they're having sex. Okay. Well, you see how the whole idea of yoga is completely polluted. And they call it, tantric, and they use the word tantra. Look up the meaning of tantra. The tantra is, you're not supposed to engage in sexual activity. Tantra is the control of oneself, I think. Look up what the definition of tantra is. I think it's literal translation of tantra is expansion. You expand.
The word tantra means woven together.
What?
Woven.
What would
weave? The past tense of weave together.
I don't get it.
Weave together.
Weaving together, like
connecting.
Like thread,
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
But in what way? Okay. Well, anyway.
Weave the physical with the spiritual.
Oh, okay. The physical with the spiritual. And that is okay. I want to take a chance here and say that's not possible. But other people will argue with me. No, it is possible. Weave the what is it say? Weave the
physical with the spiritual.
Physical with the spiritual. Okay. So that could have different meanings. Weave the physical with the spiritual. Anyway, what is the actual purpose of yoga? The purpose of yoga is to get rid of your material body. So why would you want to weave the material with the spiritual? That's the opposite of it. Right? We don't want to weave the material with the spiritual. We want to get rid of the material body. So you see how it's confusing. I mean, people are confused. They have all these different philosophies. They're actually not philosophies. They're philosophies. They're bogus. But the way they talk, it sounds like it's good. How can you weave the material and with the spiritual? The whole idea is to completely reject the material. At least that's what I understand from yoga.
So they're saying in Tantra, whatever the 4 things we forbid,
Yeah.
they use it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a school of having illicit sex, basically. Yeah.
Meat eating.
Yeah.
All the 4 things we.
And they include meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was what what was his name? Big yogi. Let's see.
Sure.
No, well, Osho's in that class. Yeah, no, it's bigger than Osho. Oh boy. Ramakrishna.
Paramahamsa.
Yeah, I don't like to say Paramahansa because he's a nonsense. Paramahansa yogi, he would do very strange things to prove that he was transcendental. He would, let's see, what would he do? He would do things that you'd never expect a yogi to do. You want to look him up, Yogananda. I don't like to say Paramahansa because it sounds like he's actually bona fide. He would do very strange things, like, I don't know, like eat stool in public. get a spoon and eat some stool. And it would completely blow the mind of people, seeing this. Now, I look at it, make sure I'm not making a mistake. But he would do very strange things that would shock people and to convince them that he's actually a transcendental person. And also, whenever he was challenged about what he was doing, he would always win the argument by going into a state of samadhi. So right in the middle of, having a discussion with him, when it looked like, he'd lose the discussion, he would just go into samadhi. And then the discussion was finished. He was a very, very clever person.
He analyzes the stool.
He what?
He analyzes the stool
Yeah.
to recommend the prescription.
Oh, who? Him?
Yeah.
Oh, so you pass stool and then he analyzes it to give us it. He actually did that?
Yeah.
How did he analyze it? By tasting it or what?
And they have planned 9-day cleansing diet. So that's where they do this.
So the yogi was doing that?
Yeah, that's trading.
It's interesting. He did other things though. They're just completely blew people's minds. And then if anyone ever challenged him, he'd just go into a state of samadhi, and then the argument was over. He wins. He was a very clever man. Very, very clever. But nonsense. Okay, so and Prabhupada finishes the purport by saying, actually, the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of ignorance by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. Now that makes sense. That makes a lot more sense than all these other bogus things. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sex gratification. Now, why would he do that? Why would the Lord let people who have these, or they're like yogis, but they want to have sex and so forth, like cats and dogs, why would he bless them? In other words, it says, whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction, the blessing, to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sex gratification. The Lord confirms this benediction in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires. So that means that man proposes and God disposes. So everything depends on what we're desiring. Because Krishna is in the heart, he can understand what we're desiring. And if we desire these low-class things as a human being, we're actually committing a sin. But it's not a sin for a dog or a cat or a hog to enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. It's not a sin for the dogs and hogs. It is a sin for a human being. So therefore, in order to enjoy that type of sinful activity, you get the body of a dog or a hog or a cat to enjoy happiness from sex life and sense gratification. Now, some people say, oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe that God would ever do a thing like that. But no, why would Why would Krishna do something like that? Because if people, as human beings, want to do that, it's sinful. But as dogs or hogs, it is not sinful. That's why. To save them from committing sin after sin after sin, Krishna stops it by giving them the body of a hog or a dog so they can do that without incurring sin. Okay. So actually, it says, actually, the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of nothing or ignorance by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. The Lord confirms this benediction in Bhagavad Gita. Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires. Or man proposes, God disposes. There it is. Okay, this is a very interesting purport. And it shows that, okay, you want to engage in sense gratification, fine. But if you do it as a human being, it's going to be sinful. But if you do it as a dog or a hog, it's not sinful. So therefore, you'll be given the body of a dog or a hog. Now, there are some stupid people who say, oh, what's wrong with that, with being a dog or a hog, as long as I can have sex? See how crazy people are. Yeah. And Prabhupada says, hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection. And therefore, they think that sense gratification is the highest goal of life. So I had a very good friend. He's a Hindu. He was a very nice man. And we were very close friends. But he just couldn't control himself. And he always was, he was like something like a health pundit. So he always knew, what's the right thing to eat and, do yoga and things like that, right? But he couldn't control his senses. So what happened? Uh, he had a heart attack, and then he had a thing that what do you call that? It's a timer or something that, not a timer. It's something that helps you to regulate your heartbeat.
Pacemaker.
A pacemaker, yeah. He had a pacemaker all the time. Right? And the whole idea was that he was let's say, he had a weak heart because he was engaging in too much sense gratification. So the pacemaker is to help you to understand when you're going down and to stop, right? So it's to warn you, you're in danger. Stop whatever you're doing. So, but he couldn't stop. And even though he had the pacemaker, he had a heart attack and died because he couldn't stop. He couldn't stop having sense gratification. That's how dangerous life is when you lose control of your mind and you can't stop having bad, behavior. So it says here, hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection. And therefore, they think that sense gratification is the highest goal of life. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time, by reciting some mantra, by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. Well, there was this one boy, he was a devotee, he was an initiated devotee. And there was this girl, she was also, I don't think she was initiated yet. And they disappeared once, for a couple days. And then they reappeared. So I asked him, I said, where were you? He said, oh, I was doing some preaching. I said, you were doing some preaching. I said, and this girl wasn't present either. So were you with her? He said, yes. How did you know? I was preaching to her. So he wasn't doing any preaching. He was having, nonsense, doing nonsense with her. He said, so when I kept asking him question over question and finally admitted what he was doing. And I said, well, that's wrong. He said, no, it's not wrong. I said, what do you mean it's not wrong? I know how to chant Hare Krishna. I said, what? What are you saying? He said, I know how to chant Hare Krishna. What he meant was he can commit sinful activities and then chant Hare Krishna and void any negative reactions. That's called the seventh. That's there are 10 things that you should never do. And the seventh one is you should never use the, let's say,
Commit simple activities.
commit simple activities on. Right, exactly. And I told him that's the seventh offense against the holy name. He said, no. He tried to, say it's not, but it is. That is exactly what it was. And it was a nonsense. Although an initiated devotee, you see. So that's why there's a saying in English. The saying is, look this up. A little knowledge is dangerous. What is it? Is in Hindi also? Oh, Neem Hakim Khatrejan. Yeah.
Half knowledge.
Yeah. Half doctor is
No
dangerous.
doctor.
Yeah. Half doctor is no doctor. Yeah. And what does it say? Oh, no. Yeah.
A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. This common saying.
Yes. So these people, they come, they hear some lectures, and then, they go off and on their merry way, doing all kinds of simple things, thinking they can nullify it by chanting Hare Krishna. Well, you might be able to nullify it once or twice, but if it becomes a habit, it's not going to be nullified anymore because it's purposely trying to use the Maha Mantra for sense gratification. And that is an offense against the holy name. And Prabhupada says that hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection. And therefore they think that sense gratification is the highest goal of life. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time, by reciting some mantra, by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. So by reciting some mantra and by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. Such persons are described here as Hatha Medhasa, which means those whose brains are spoiled. It's so true. It is so true. Hatha Medhasa, those whose brains are spoiled. They aspire for material enjoyment by perfection of yoga or meditation. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated by the Lord that the intelligence of those who worship the demigods has been spoiled. Similarly, here too, it is stated by Kardama Muni that one who aspires after material enjoyment by practice of yoga has spoiled his brain substance and is fool number one. Actually, the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of ignorance by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given a benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense enjoyment. Now, why does he say that? Well, it's because the dogs, hogs, and cats, they don't commit sin by having sex. But by the way they're, you know, created, the dogs, hogs, and cats, they only have sex certain times of the year, and then it's finished. I think it's twice a year. They get into heat, and then it's finished. So they're regulated. But human beings, like, okay, look up, uh, what's his name? Harvey
Einstein.
Weinstein. Yeah. It's not Einstein, it's Weinstein. But Weinstein is not far away from Harvey. No, Harvey, no, Einstein was not far away from Harvey Weinstein. They were both doing the same thing. It was just how much they were doing it. So Einstein was doing it a little bit less than Weinstein, but they were doing the same thing. They were having illicit sex, both of them. That's why I say Einstein was not really that smart. What's it say about Harvey?
He was sentenced to 23 years in prison.
Yes.
He was convicted of rape and sexual assault.
What? Yeah, sexual assault, right?
Yeah.
So what he would do, see, he was a big movie making mogul, right? So he would trick all these young girls or young pretty girls who'd come hoping to get a job, and in a movie and become a movie star. So he would promise, "Oh, I'll make you a movie star," right? But all he would do is just take advantage of them, and he got away with it for a long time. And then it all crashed, and he had to eventually had to go to jail. And then I don't know if he's still in jail or he did his time or he got a good lawyer and got out of jail, something like that. But he was really a very low class guy, very, very low class. And he ruined the lives of many women who he always said, "Well, I'll get you on I'll get you into Hollywood. I'll get you, promise you this and promise you that." And, but uh, he always insisted that they have sex with him. And they never became movie stars. They were treated or like dirt and cheated. So that's Harvey Weinstein. So what's interesting? You have Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Weinstein. You have all the Stein.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Epstein, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein. And you have all these guys. Well, there was this one Jewish man. He said, "But all these guys are all Jews. All these guys that are raping women, they're all Jews." He said, "Yeah, that's not a badge of honor. It's a badge of dishonor." Okay, so I think we're almost finished. Are there any questions? So the main point is actually the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of nescience or ignorance by worshiping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. Well, all these modern yoga schools, I'm not going to say all of them, but many of them, the first thing they tell you when you go to start your yoga practice is this is not a spiritual But we don't have any spirituality involved in our yoga. It's simply for health and so forth. So that's not, of course, yoga. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today, persons whose brain substance is spoiled, that means human beings, are given a benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. So, why does Krishna do that? Because it's not a sin for a dog or a hog or a cat to engage in sex. However, the sex that the dog, the hog, and the cats engage in is regulated. They can only do that in certain periods twice a year. They're they're regulated by Krishna. Whereas human beings, they're not regulated at all because they can't control themselves. So that's why it's very sinful for human beings to engage in that kind of behavior. But it's not sinful for the dogs and hogs and the cats because they are regulated. So they can only engage in reproductive behavior twice a year. I think it's twice a year. But for people, for human beings that want to engage in that type of activity, Krishna gives them the benediction of becoming a cat or a dog or a hog and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. Well, now we know why there's so many dogs, especially in India, running around wild. Yes. All night long you can hear them fighting with each other, you know. And then during the day they're sort of sleeping and but at night they're fighting all night long and making so much noise you can't even go to sleep. They're all wild dogs. Yeah. Okay. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
I have a question about about yesterday. Um, I went over Canto 5, chapter or verse 26, and wrote down the 28 different hellish planets. And I noticed the first two, the first one, a person who steals.
It's about sex,
I
right?
think it was the first one. It said a person who steals another person's money is put into Tamisha. And then the second one, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the second one was a man who tricks someone and enjoys his wife is put into the extremely hellish condition known as Ananda Tamisha. And my question is, when we went over the 5 different energies that we are covered by when we come here to this planet, that was also um, it was the 5 types of ignorance. It was
Yes.
Tamisha, and then so those were the same. So I was a little confused um, if those are hellish planets, but those are also types of ignorance that we're covered by. So I was wondering, is that also hell? Like when we come here?
Whenever you're covered by ignorance, it's hellish. It doesn't, and it's not only that, you go to a place called hell. You're living in hell when you're overwhelmed by these
Hmm.
lusty types of consciousness. So the whole point is consciousness. It's not exactly geography. You go to hell. You can be in hell because of a polluted consciousness, and then you suffer. So, what is your question?
Yeah, I was wondering, was Tamisha or Ananda Tamisha, were those places or were those just levels of like different consciousness? So when we come here, and when people come here to this planet and they come here with that energy, that ignorance that they're covered by, is it because of they committed some of these offenses? Like, is it because they actually tricked someone and enjoyed someone's wife and was put into that hellish condition if they come here covered with the energy Ananda Tamisha?
Well, okay, our homework was, and somebody did it actually, to name all the different places in hell and what happens in each one. So someone's did that homework, and there's like 28 different parts of hell, and in each one is specific to a certain type of misconduct. Let's put it like that. So, hell,
Her question is,
Yeah.
some of the words that were referred to
they
as
use the
hell,
same words.
because the 5 ignorances that we talked about,
Yeah.
Tamishra, Andatamishra,
Yeah.
Moha, Mahamoha, like that. Some of those same words are used here in the hells.
Yeah.
So does it mean like that itself is 5 ignorances are also basically essentially hell, because we're living in a hell because of those things? Is that right, Mataji?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Or is there on top of what we're doing now, there's another level of, again, Tamishra and another Tamishra and so on?
Well, you have to understand, whenever you're reading these Shastric literatures, it is usually states of mind. It's not only a physical thing. So when a person has a hellish state of mind, they're in hell. Right? And whether it's physical place or not, they're still in hell. So you should look at it like that. Person who has a hellish mentality is actually living in hell. But because why? Most people live in their mind.
Mm.
They experience most of their life, they're experiencing things mentally. And obviously, they're doing some things, especially as you get older, you start to experience most things in your mind and not physically. So that is more or less living in hell. Mm,
That makes sense.
yeah. There are a lot of examples of that. I won't go into it now, but
I wrote
it's
them.
late.
Yeah, I wrote it
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, I think we'll stop right there unless there are any more questions or comments. Hare Krishna.
Any other question online? Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama.
Okay, there's a lot of takeaways from today's verse and purport. It says here, that nonsense people, they advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time by reciting some mantra and by some practice can cheaply aspire for perfection. That is a very important statement. Such persons are described here as hata medasaha, which means those whose brains are spoiled. They aspire for material enjoyment by perfection of yoga or meditation. They aspire for material enjoyment by perfection of yoga or meditation. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated by the Lord that the intelligence of those who worship the demigod has been spoiled. Similarly, here too, it is stated by Kardama Muni that one who aspires after material enjoyment by practice of yoga has spoiled his brain substance and is fool number one. There you go. So we have to be very careful. So one time I was at a festival. This was a very, very long time ago. And I was I had a banana in my hand, and this man walked by. He looked like a yogi, and I looked at him and smiled, and he looked at me and smiled, and he came closer to me, and he said, "I am so and so. I was born in Vrindavan." Now this is when I was just a brand new devotee. So I thought, "Oh my God, born in Vrindavan." I had never met someone that was born in Vrindavan. So I said, "Oh, I'm so happy to speak to you." I said, I've never met anybody born in Vrindavan. And see, now I had a banana in my hand. I was just holding it like that because we got into this discussion. So at one point, this very, attractive girl walks by, and he grabbed the banana, took it out of my hand, just took it out of my hand, and ran after the girl and gave it to her. So when he comes, and then he's talking to her, and then he comes back. When he comes back, I said, I said, "Why'd you take my banana away?" He said, "Oh, you did not see?" I said, "What do you mean I did not see? Well, what was I supposed to see?" He said, "You see, your guru has not taught you correctly." I said, "What do you mean my guru hasn't taught me correctly?" He said, "That was Krishna."
Oh,
You see how what they're like, he had an answer for everything. So there's nothing you can say to a person like that, because that means they're completely corrupt.
so they take this the seventh chapter where Krishna says, I'm the taste in water, I'm the capability
Okay.
or the ability in men, and like that, basically they take that interpretation
Yeah.
and now they, try to misuse that to say that, okay, Krishna is
You did not
the
see
real Krishna.
Krishna.
You did not see me, like you're
Yeah.
not perceiving Krishna in everything around you. So that's
Yeah.
so there is the right way to see it and then the wrong way to see it.
Oh
This
yeah.
is this is Krishna is saying, like, through this you can see that I'm behind the entire creation. But they are like, oh, you know what? I'll use that to say, okay, I'm
Yeah, it basically was telling that girl that he gave the banana to. She was Krishna.
yeah.
And he says, "But your guru hasn't taught you properly. You're not be able to see Krishna when he walks by. And the whole thing is bogus. But these yogis, the way they, say things and do things, it confuses you. You know. After that, I was confused. The guy's saying, "Oh, you did not see? That was Krishna." You know. And then he blames it on Prabhupada. "Oh, your guru has not taught you properly, right?" Yeah. Yeah, as if this guy's going to teach people properly. Yeah. Okay. Haribol. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.